Om Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Shvara. Very good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome to you all to our ongoing Bhagavad Gita class. Welcome also to our many students watching these classes online. We continue our study of chapter 18. There we are. And we'll begin recitation with verse 18. And as always, as I'm chanting, read the translation and then repeat after me. Jnanam jneyam parijñāta, jnanam jneyam parijñāta, trividha karma chodana, trividha karma chodana, karanam karma karteti, karanam karma karteti, trividha karma sangraha, trividha karma sangraha, Jnanam karma cha karta cha, jnanam karma cha karta cha, tridhaiva guna bhedataha, tridhaiva guna bhedataha, prochyate guna sankhyaane, prochyate guna sankhyaane, yathavachrinutanyapi, yathavachrinutanyapi. Sorry. You're okay. My slides got mixed up here. Guna Sankhya. So verse 20 was odd for our online viewers. So about several dozen slides go by very quickly. Sorry for the interruption. Sarva bhuteshu yenaikam, sarva bhuteshu yenaikam, bhavam avyayamikshate, bhavam avyayamikshate, avibhaktam vibhakteshu, avibhaktam vibhakteshu, tadjnanam vidhi satvikam, tadjnanam vidhi satvikam, prataktvena tu yajnanam, prataktvena tu yajnanam, nana bhavan pratakvidhan, nana bhavan pratakvidhan, veti sarveshu bhuteshu, veti sarveshu bhuteshu, tadjnanam vidhi rajasam, vidhi rajasam, yattu kritsnavare kasmin, yattu kritsnavare kasmin, karye saktamahaitukam, karye saktamahaitukam, atatvartavaralpam cha, atatvartavaralpam cha, tat tattamasamudahritam, tattamasamudahritam, niyatam sangarahitam, niyatam sangarahitam, aragadveshatah kritam, aragadveshatah kritam, apalaprepsuna karma, apalaprepsuna karma, yattat satvikam uchyate, yattat satvikam uchyate. Very good. We will pick up the thread on verse 18. And you remember in my introduction to this chapter that it falls into two parts. The first part of the chapter is a continuation of subject matters we've been seeing, starting back in chapter 14, subject matters dealing with the three gunas, this analysis of the world and of us, human beings, and of our behavior, an analysis based on the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. The second half of the chapter, which we haven't come to yet, is the concluding portion of the Bhagavad Gita, and we see some of the most wonderful teachings there. These teachings are also very important, and you'll see why as we continue. So in starting with today's class, we shift the focus to, we've already discussed tapas and sannyasa in prior verses. Now we shift, actually, why should I introduce it? Sri Krishna himself gives a very adequate introduction here. So we'll let Sri Krishna introduce this next section of the text. Jnanam jneyam parajnata, jnanam jneyam parajnata, trividha karma chodana, trividha karma chodana, karanam karma karteti, karanam karma karteti, trividah karma sangraha, trividah karma sangraha. In the second line, he's talking about karma chodana. Chodana means that which impels you. That which impels you, in this case, to perform karma. And he says, trividha karma chodana. There are three factors that compel you to act. And we've already discussed raga and dvesha very extensively in prior chapters. But here Sri Krishna is taking a very different approach, a little bit more technical approach to this idea, not idea. What is it that compels you to act? What are these karma chodana factors compelling you to act? In the first line, he identifies the three: jnanam, jneyam, and parajnata. Parajnata, it means jnata, same meaning, agent of action. For any action, there needs to be an agent of action. There needs to be jneyam, something to be known, an object that you want to, perhaps an object that you want to attain through your action, or sometimes an object you want to avoid by some action, and not just physical objects, anything in life. And then finally, there is jnanam, knowledge. And knowledge, you would say, is the means or instruments. We have agent, object, and means. And this is the nature of this portion of the text. Very technical like that. Agent, object, and means. In pursuing an object, there is the agent, jnata, you. There is an object, jneyam, that you want to get or avoid. And there is jnanam, your knowledge that enables you to pursue that object. So this is the trividha karma chodana, three factors that impel you to act. And look at the last line. He says there are also trividaha karma sangraha. There are also three kinds of karma sangraha. Sangraha, some of you are in our Tuesday Vedanta class. We talk about karaka, factors involved in action. In fact, earlier we saw 5 factors in this chapter. 5 factors involved in action. Those factors are called karaka. And he says there are trividaha, 3 kinds of factors, which are karma, sangraha, involved in action. And what are those? Once again, agent, object, and means. Agent is karta, the agent of action. Before, if I misspoke, jnata means knower. And not, if I said agent of action, I misspoke. Jnata, there's knower. Jnayam, that which is to be known. And jnanam, the process of knowing. And here in the 3rd line, once again, agent, object, and means. Agent is karta. Agent of action is you. Karma is the object which is performed, and karanam is the means of performing those actions. Eyes, ears, hands, feet, etc. Now, this looks like it's going to be a very tedious and boring slug through all of this stuff. It's not going to be. First thing Sri Krishna does is he reduces the scope of his discussion. He picks only 3 of these for consideration. So he's talked about 6 different things. He's going to focus only on 3 of them. What are the 3? The first word, jnanam, and then in the 3rd line, karma and karta. Jnanam, knowledge, karma, action, and karta, agent of action. And he's going to analyze these as he's done before in terms of the 3 gunas. And you will find this highly relevant. You'll see why as we proceed. Jnanam karma cha karta cha. Jnanam karma cha karta cha. Tridhaiva guna bhedataha. Tridhaiva guna bhedataha. Prochyate guna sankhyane, prochyate guna sankhyane, yathavat shrunutan yapi, yathavat shrunutan yapi. So you see the 3 items that he selected: jnanam, knowledge; karma, action; and karta, agent of action. Of course, he's talking about you. This is not a philosophy class. He is talking about you. You are the karta, agent of action. What do you do? Karma. And what do you do those karmas based upon? Jnanam, your knowledge, your worldview. So you can see Sri Krishna has picked these 3 as being very fundamental to how we live our lives. What do we do, and why do we do it? This is a very important discussion. And he says that these 3, jnanam, knowledge; karma, action; and karta, agent of action, these are tridha eva. They are threefold. Tridha eva. How? Guna bhedataha, according to their differences of guna. Sattvika, Rajasa, and Tamasika. So according to their gunas, they are threefold. Prochyate guna sankhyane. And this is what is taught in the prochyate. It is what is taught, guna sankhyane, in the scriptures that describe the gunas. The gunas are very prominent in the teachings of the Sankhya Darshana, which is attributed to the Rishi Kapila. So the Rishi Kapila created this school of thought called Sankhya, codified, I should say, the school of thought, and gunas figure very prominently in that school of thought. So these 3 gunas are taught in those scriptures, and he says to Arjuna, yathavat, about those 3, jnanam, karma, and karta, understood in terms of the gunas, Sri Krishna says, Shanu tani api. Listen to this description of the 3. So we're going to see, as we've seen earlier in this chapter, as we saw in chapter 17, as we saw in chapter 16 and 14, we're going to see this threefold analysis in terms of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And I need to, remember we had like a disclaimer that went along with it? This threefold analysis is not for the sake of labeling others, right? You remember this disclaimer. It's not for the sake of, oh, he's so tamasic. Oh, she's so rajasic. That's, forget it. And let me make a point. How well do you know these people? Even your own family members occasionally behave in ways that you don't understand, right? If you're married, your spouse behaves in ways that you don't understand. If you don't understand your own spouse, how can you understand other people? A little humility goes a long way here. We imagine ourselves as being able to astutely read other people. Look, we use that expression in English, right? You read another person like you read a book. Not. Absolutely not. Let's be a little humble about this. We make some observations, and making observations are fine, but we need to admit that we really don't know what's going on in the minds of others, and to imagine that we do is a little bit of a delusion, right? Okay. There's another part to this disclaimer. This is not meant for others, it's meant for us. It's meant to observe our own behaviors, to find out what kinds of behaviors are sattvika, which are rajasa, which are tamasa, and then to minimize the tamasa and rajasa, and to build up the sattvika. And the disclaimer here is this. This is not for self-judgment. Many people have a problem with this. Very common. Oh, I'm so tamasic. I'm so lazy. I'm so dull. That kind of self-judgment is harmful. It is. It is harmful. It grinds away, so to speak, at your self-esteem. It reduces your self-esteem, and the lower your self-esteem becomes, the less functional you become in dealing with difficulties in life. And very honestly, someone with low self-esteem is at risk of depression and other kinds of mental illness. Self-esteem is vital. Now, the fact is, we're all, here is good. We have this problem of categorizing good and bad, which is really, really a problem. This categorization is a problem. Good and bad. Is Karela good or bad? This bitter gourd. Half of you will say good, half of you will say bad, and that's just how it is. So it's very arbitrary, and we need to maybe outgrow that kind of categorical good and bad thing. Same thing with regard to ourselves. Are you a good person or a bad person? Well, depends. You've done so many good things in life, but then 10 years ago, remember what happened? No, please, I'd rather you not. But look at this. If we focus on our mistakes, we make one conclusion. If we focus on the good things we've done, we make another conclusion, and these conclusions are 180 degrees apart. One is good, one is bad. What is the truth? The truth is neither good nor bad. All of us are a complex combination of many, many things. You call it khichdi. Everyone is a combination. So the fact is, we are all good people and good people make terrible mistakes sometimes. This is how to understand in a more objective way. We are all good people, but all good people occasionally make mistakes, sometimes terrible mistakes. Okay? And this understanding is crucial when you do introspection, which is what this chapter is about, or this portion of the chapter is about. It's about introspection, about looking at your own behavior, looking at your own thinking, and evaluating that behavior and thinking in terms of these three gunas. So as we proceed now with a series of verses, please do be introspective, because if you're not introspective, we're wasting this, right? This is meant for introspection. It's not meant, as I said before, it's not meant for evaluating others. It's meant only for evaluating yourself. So do be introspective, but don't be self-critical. That's the message here. Okay? With that in mind, we can proceed. Yes. Sarvabhuteshu yenaikam, sarvabhuteshu yenaikam, bhavamavyayamikshate, bhavamavyayamikshate, avibhaktam vibhakteshu, avibhaktam vibhakteshu, tadjnanam vidhi satvikam, tadjnanam vidhi satvikam. Remember the big view? We're going to discuss first jnanam, then karma, then karta. And jnanam we're starting with, and first sattvika jnanam, then rajasa, and then tamasa. So here, sattvika jnanam, last line. Tat jnanam, that knowledge, vidhi, you should understand, O Arjuna, that knowledge is sattvikam. Sattva guna is a principle of purity. That which is conducive to spiritual growth is sattva guna. That which is conducive to contentment and inner peace is sattva guna. So what kind of knowledge is sattvika? And he says in the, going up to the top, so that knowledge is sattvika. What kind of knowledge? First line, the knowledge yena at the end. Yena ekam, we have to break the words apart. The knowledge jnana, by which, and the second line, and again, we have to jump. Remember, these are verses written in a particular meter, which causes prose order to get disturbed. Be ready to jump around. You have to be agile, as it were. Yena, and end of the second line, ikshate. The knowledge yena, by which one ikshate, sees, understands. The knowledge by which one understands, sarva bhuteshu, first word, in all beings, one who understands, one who recognizes in all beings, ekam bhavam, one reality. One reality which is avyayam, unchanging, eternal, immutable. One reality which is avibhaktam, third line, undivided, vibhakteshu, in all individual beings. One who recognizes the underlying one reality because of which all beings exist. That knowledge, the knowledge by which you recognize that one underlying reality, that knowledge is satvikam. Obviously, that's knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of your essential divinity. Not your essential divinity, the essential divinity of all beings. That knowledge is sattvika because imagine how different the world would be if it were universally accepted that all beings are divine in nature and equally divine. That's what he says. Ekam bhavam sarvabhuteshu. The same divinity in all beings. Notice how many of the problems in life come due to this separation, which we'll see in the very next verse. When you look upon some beings as being higher and some as being lower. So there are more educated, there are less educated. There are more wealthy, there are less wealthy. There are those in this ethnic group, those in the other ethnic group. Those who belong to my religion and those who belong to other religions. This is the beginning of divisiveness, and I don't need to tell you how much divisiveness is hurting cultures around the world today. Divisiveness has become a huge problem. We'll see divisiveness more as we continue. Here, the solution to that divisiveness is to recognize the innate and identical divinity of all beings. By the way, all beings include animals, and all beings would include this planet on which we live, which can be understood as the planet is a living thing. It has, in fact, the philosophers like to get very poetic about it. The lungs of this planet are the jungles of the Amazon. Nice. The blood vessels are all the rivers. You get the idea. This planet is also a living thing. So the sattvika jnanam, the knowledge which is sattvika, is to recognize the innate divinity of all that exists. And this perspective is crucial in avoiding divisiveness, which is what we see in the very next verse. Pratakttvena tu yajnanam, pratakttvena tu yajnanam, nana bhavan pratakvedhan, nana bhavan pratakvedhan, veti sarveshu bhuteshu, veti sarveshu bhuteshu, tadjnanam vidhi rajasam, Anam vidhi rajasam. Last line. Tadjnanam, that knowledge. Vidhi, O Arjuna, please understand the knowledge that is rajasam. Remember, rajas is a principle of passion, of activity, of being extrovert. And that principle now is being applied to knowledge. What kind of knowledge is rajasam? And the knowledge by which, you have to look at the third line. The knowledge by which veti, one understands. Actually, you have to jump around. You have to pick up yajnanam from the end of the first line and then jump down to the third line, the knowledge that veti, one understands, sarveshu bhuteshu, in all beings. I'll paraphrase this for you in just a moment. The knowledge by which one understands. This is rajasam knowledge. The knowledge that by which you understand sarveshu bhuteshu, in all beings, you understand with regard to all beings, you understand them pratakttvena, separately. Nana bhavan, having different natures. Pratakvedhan, having individual natures. You see everyone as being distinct and different. And of course, in many ways, we are all distinct and different. We all have different appearances. We all dress differently. We look differently. We speak differently. We have different lives. There are so many differences among us, and you can't deny those differences. Rajasa Jnanam is to focus on the differences. So the differences would mean this person has money that they can give me. Therefore, I like this person, right? This person belongs to my religion. Therefore, I like this person. This person belongs to an ethnicity or a caste that is the same as mine. Therefore, I like this person. This is the problem of overly focusing on these differences. All the differences are true. But to focus on the difference means to ignore the underlying reality, which is one and the same, the underlying divinity. And the problem is, the moment actually this is an important observation. When you're going to make differences, the most fundamental difference we make among people, we always, human nature, and this goes back to the time we were cavemen and cave women carrying clubs and all of this. Back in those ancient, that's 1,000,000 years ago. 1,000,000 years ago, something that was so fundamental to human nature is the division number one. What is division number one? Us and them. And here it goes. Us and them. The moment you make that division, culture is gone. Because us is good, them is bad, we fear them, we hate them, we fight against them. So us and them at every level. So in ancient times it was tribes. Our tribe is good, their tribe is bad. How different is it today? Not different. We don't call them tribes anymore. We call them nationalities, we call them ethnicities, we call them religions. But it's the same us versus them problem. So again, the differences are what they are. They're real. But the unity that underlies these divisions is also real. So what do we focus on? If we focus on these individual differences, this is, I'm shaking my head because such a common problem occurs with this, because them, you want to label. They are different from us. Why? Because all of them are like that. This is stereotype. All of them are like that. Is there ever a situation like that? You know, the moment you say they are like that, you are generalizing, you're creating a stereotype, you're overlooking the fact that them is not homogeneous either. There's tremendous differences among them, and some of them might be better than us. But we get carried away with this us and them. We get stuck with this stereotyping. When I was young, growing up in this country, the stereotypes about black people were terrible. All black people are like this. All black people are like that. Terrible and wrong and harmful. So, setting those differences are true. Black people are black. It's a difference. But underlying those differences is a unity, that one identical divinity of all beings. Okay, this is Rajasa Jnanam. Now finally, it gets worse. If that's not bad enough, it gets worse. Yattu kritsnavare kasmin, yattu kritsnavare kasmin, karye saktamahaitukam, karye saktamahaitukam, atatvartavaralpam cha, atatvartavaralpam cha, tattamasamudahritam, tattamasamudahritam. The commentator looks at this in a kind of philosophical way. The first knowledge is Advaita, non-duality. Everyone is equally divine. Second verse that we just saw, Rajasajnanam, Dvaita, duality, very common philosophical principle that we find in the Hindu tradition, duality. Third one, there's an ancient school of thought called Charvaka Mata. In modern times, we call it materialism. And the basic principle of materialism is eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow you'll be dead. This is this is material. Although in the Charvakas had a little different. Ghritam bhibhet amritam. By it's a little bit ironic in modern times. They say, by drinking ghee, you become immortal. We know otherwise today. Ghee, if I understand right, is saturated fat, which your doctor will say is really bad for you. But they didn't know all those details back then. To them, ghee was the most glorious of foods and expensive in ancient times. So based on that, they said you should drink lots of ghee, was the message of these materialists, the Charvakas. So what about those Charvakas? Tattamasam udahritam. The knowledge that they held was tamasam. Udahritam, this is given as an example of tamasam jnanam, that lowest kind of knowledge, the knowledge which is, in the first line, yattu, the knowledge which is kritsnavat ekasmin karye. Ekasmin karye, with regard to the body, kritsnavat, that's it. There is only the physical body. Denying that there was any existence before the physical body, denying the existence of anything after the death of the physical body. Ekasmin karye, with regard to this body, kritsnavat, that's it. And with regard to this physical body, saktam. Here saktam having a sense of confinement, limitation. There's only this limited body, limited because it only lives so many years. In ancient times, they thought if you drink more ghee, you live to 100. Now we know if you drink more ghee, you won't live to 100. Okay, that's a little different perspective. Further, they say that the existence of this body is ahaitukam, is a technical term meaning having no cause, but it suggests that just random. How did you get born? Just happened. Random. Meaninglessness of life, which is what he says in the very next word. Sri Krishna says, atattva artavat alpam. Everything, the body is alpam, insignificant, because atattvartavat, the body has no essence, has no eternality. This body is only going to be around for a limited period of time, so therefore, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, this is a very typical materialistic doctrine. Every culture seems to have this materialism in their panoply of their whole range of philosophies. But this philosophy is very dangerous because it minimizes the value of life. So, if this is just a physical body, who cares? I find it very ironic that terrorism in the 20th and 21st century was not only committed by Muslims, but primarily committed by Muslims, and committed for religious reasons. But the religion that says life is valuable, then those same terrorists go ahead and kill innocent people. There's a disconnect there. The Quran doesn't denigrate the value of human life. The Quran, like all scriptures, doesn't denigrate the value of human life. The terrorists do. This is tamasa jnanam, knowledge which devalues life. And don't think only Muslim terrorists devalue life. In the 1960s, I was a youth, and in those days, this country was at war in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese were gooks. Gook was a derogatory term to describe the Vietnamese for the sake of dehumanizing them, devaluing them, because each week in those days, this country was killing thousands of gooks. How can a good Christian nation, as many people call this, how can a Christian nation approve of killing thousands? Well, they approve of killing thousands because they are gooks. This is the dehumanization, devaluation. This is tamasa jnanam, to devalue human life. So sattvika jnanam, life is divine. Rajasa jnanam, life is divine, but some are more divine than others, and those who are like me are more divine. Those who are not like me are less divine, correct? This is Rajasa jnanam, that divisiveness. And finally, tamasa jnanam, life has no value, life has no meaning. So all of this is taught by Sri Krishna to cause us to reflect on our own attitudes. And we live at a time when divisiveness is rampant. This Rajasa jnanam is rampant. Everyone should be on guard, not to fall into that divisiveness. Okay, now having talked about these three types of jnanam, the next topic was karma. Jnanam, karma, and karta. So we see karma next, three kinds of karma. Niyatam sangarahitam, niyatam sangarahitam, aragadveshatah kritam, aragadveshatah kritam, apalaprepsuna karma, apalaprepsuna karma, yattat satvikam uchyate, yattat satvikam uchyate. If you're reading as you chanted, then you know that sattvika karma is karma yoga. Isn't that what he's just defined here? He's defined karma yoga in this verse. Starting the last line, yattat sattvikam uchyate, yattat, that. That what? And here we jump around. Are you ready to be agile? End of the third line, yattat karma. End of the second line, yattat karma kritam. Those karmas which are done, sattvika muchyate, are called sattvika. Those karmas which are done are called sattvika. Why are they called sattvika? The rest of the verse describes those sattvika karmas. Those sattvika karmas are niyatam karma, karmas which should be done. Niyatam literally means that which is mandated, that which should be done. It means following dharma. In a simple word, niyatam karma means to follow dharma. So dharmic actions. Dharmic actions which are sangha rahitam, without attachment. Without attachment means you have recognized the impossibility of gaining perfect peace and contentment in life through worldly actions, karma. With this understanding, you have undergone a transformation of thinking, which is at the heart of karma yoga. At the heart of karma yoga is this recognition: no matter how hard I try in life, I will never create a state of perfect peace and contentment. My efforts will never result in perfect peace and contentment. That leads to a radical change of perspective, a shift of worldview, in which instead of focusing on what you do for the sake of peace and contentment, you will now focus on a life of spiritual growth. Doesn't mean you stop doing. You still go to work, you still cook food and do the dishes, but now the emphasis has changed. The perspective has changed. You're no longer engaged in worldly activities for the sake of the limited results. You are now engaged in worldly activities to fulfill your responsibilities, dharma, as part of your path of spiritual growth. That is karma yoga. We're getting a one verse. In fact, this verse very precisely describes what is karma yoga. And he goes on to say that those actions which niyatam, doing dharmic activities, sangha rahitam, without attachment, araga dvesha kritaha. Araga dvesha krita. Those actions which are done without raga and dvesha. How many times have we discussed raga and dvesha? Those inner compulsions, a compulsion to chase after what looks desirable, raga, a compulsion to run away from what seems undesirable, dvesha. And the problem with raga dvesha is it makes you run towards things which are adharmic. It makes you run away from things which are dharmic. It prevents you from living a life of dharma because you are suffering from this inner compulsivity. Raga dvesha, as you've heard me say many times, you cannot translate raga dvesha as likes and dislikes, as they're usually translated, likes and dislikes. That doesn't do justice at all to these teachings. Raga and dvesha are not likes and dislikes. Raga and dvesha are inner compulsions, this compulsivity. And compulsivity is what drives good people to do stupid things. Gosh. I don't know what caused it. I was reflecting some time ago on some of my deeds as a youth. My gosh, talk about compulsivity. When I remember, especially as a teenager, in the 1960s, it was already a wild time, and I was a wild teenager. I was the definition of compulsivity. And that compulsivity led me to do so many harmful things, adharmic things. My parents taught me to do better. I couldn't do better because of that compulsivity. Fortunately, you're not like a teenager. You are all grown adults. But isn't it interesting that as we grow up, the compulsivity becomes less, it becomes more manageable, but does it completely go away? With karma yoga, it does. Without karma yoga, it never, ever goes away. So how will that compulsivity go away is, I'm sorry to repeat myself, when you recognize that acting on these compulsions isn't going to bring you perfect peace and contentment. In fact, resisting compulsivity will lead you towards perfect peace and contentment. This is the solution. The solution is karma yoga. We have talked so much about karma yoga. It's perhaps the most predominant and important topic in the whole Bhagavad Gita. And here we have this one verse definition which is brilliant, and it includes one more feature of karma yoga, which is karma yoga which is done by whom? Aphala prepsuna. Prepsu is one who has a desire. Phala prepsu is the desire for the results. Phala prepsuna, karmas which are done by one who doesn't have a compulsion to get something desirable or avoid something undesirable. This is it. And it's all, and I'm repeating this a third time. If I'm repeating it a third time, it's that important. The essence of karma yoga is this conversion of thinking to know that by pursuing these compulsions, I don't get perfect peace and contentment. By resisting these compulsions, I come closer to finding perfect peace and contentment. This recognition is the key. It's at the heart of karma yoga. So sattvika karma is karma yoga. What is rajasa karma? Next verse. Yattu karmepsuna karma, yattu kamepsuna sahankarena va punaha, sahankarena va punaha, kriyate bahulayasam, kriyate bahulayasam, tad rajasamudahritam, tad rajasamudahritam. Jumping around, you have tat in the last line and karma in the first line. Tat karma. That karma, rajasam udahritam, that karma is called rajasam. What kind of karma? First line, yattu. That karma which is done by whom? Kama ipsuna. By one who desires to fulfill one, by kama ipsuna, it's almost redundant. Kama ipsu, the desire to fulfill desires. What is it? Every desire is to fulfill a desire, but by karmas which are done for the sake of fulfilling desires, which means karmas which are compelled by raga and dvesha. Or, Sri Krishna says, va punaha, or karmas which are done sa ahankarena, with ego, meaning you want to show off. So many times you do things not to fulfill a particular desire. You just want others to see how great you are. So you show off whatever it is. Okay? And those efforts which kriyate are done, bahula ayasam, with much effort. You know, don't take this too seriously. When you've got a bigger house or a nicer car, there's nothing wrong. You can have a nice house, have a nice car, but some people really want that nice house or nice car as a kind of showing off. Showing off how much money they can earn because of how smart they are, how industrious they are, etc., etc. I'm not talking about you, but there are people who are like that. They want to show off through their accomplishments, that kind of karma. So if the karma is compelled by raga and dvesha, or if the karma is this showing off kind of thing, that karma, Sri Krishna says, is rajasa. And once again, things get worse as we go for tamasa karma. Anubandham kshayam himsam, anubandham kshayam himsan, anapeksha cha paurusham, anapeksha cha paurusham, mohararabhyate karma, mohararabhyate karma, yattattamasamuchyate, yattattamasamuchyate. Yat tat, and tat gets connected to karma, prior word. Tat karma. That karma, tamasa muchyate, is called tamasa. What kind of karma is called tamasa? Yat, that karma which is mohat, third line, mohat arabhyate. Karmas which arabhyate are undertaken mohat, and that's a crucial word. Due to ignorance, due to wrong thinking. Actions born of wrong thinking. And in particular, actions born due to ignorance of dharma, failing to recognize and follow what is dharma. And an important observation here. So Sri Krishna says, tamasa karma, wrong deeds, are done due to ignorance. This really contrasts with other religious traditions, which says evil deeds are done due to the so-called power of evil. This is a radical difference. If you've never appreciated this, you should. This is a chasm of difference between Western and Eastern thought. Western thought imagines some kind of power of evil that somehow infects people. It gets insinuated into people and it compels these people to do horrible things, the power of evil. And notice in the Hindu tradition, there's no equivalent concept to the power of evil. It says, and Sri Krishna says here very clearly, wrong deeds, harmful deeds, adharmic deeds are done not due to evil. They're due, how? Mohat, due to ignorance, due to delusion, due to wrong thinking. And what kind and how are those wrong deeds done? Second line, you really have to be agile right now. Anapeksha, actions which are done without consideration. Without consideration of what? Anapeksha means without considering. Without considering what? Go to the top now. Without considering anubandham. Without considering the consequences of your action. And once again, when I think about my behavior as a teenager, that really stood out. I didn't consider the consequences of my actions. And I caused a lot of harm to others and perhaps to myself due to acting without considering the consequences of action. And here, anupeksha, without considering kshayam, the harm or loss or destruction that your actions can cause. Anapeksha, without considering himsam, the harm done to others from your actions. And anapeksha, without considering paurusham. Here, paurusham means force, aggressiveness, without considering how destructive your forceful behaviors can be. So that kind of action which is done, and the key word here is mohat, actions which are done out of ignorance, without considering the consequences, without considering the harm caused, without considering the consequence of the exertion of force, that is tamasam karma, that is adharmic karma. Notice when we discussed rajasa karma, that rajasa karma is still dharmic. So you can follow raga and dvesha still kind of confined within the realm of dharma. You can, a mature person will resist compulsions which are adharmic, but allow themselves to be carried away by compulsions which are still within the scope of dharma. I'm going to say this again because it's a little subtle. Think about this in terms of your own behavior. You're smart enough and wise enough not to be compelled to do something that is adharmic. Good. But there are many things that you're still compelled to do, and you allow yourself to be compelled to do because you say, oh, it's not wrong. If it's not wrong, why should I not do it? But again, you're compelled to do it. That compulsion is the problem. As long as you're compelled, you will continue to suffer and struggle because acting on compulsions will never, ever lead you to perfect peace and contentment. My point here is rajasa karma can still be dharmic, but it just doesn't lead you to perfect peace and contentment, as opposed to tamasa karma, which is ruination for everyone else in addition to you. Everyone is lost. Okay, good place to conclude our class today. We have yet to see the three kinds of karta, agent. We'll see that in our next class. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our Vedanta class at 10 o'clock. By the way, we're starting a new chapter. And this is this brilliant work of Upadesha Sahasri. If you want to come and join the class, every chapter is quite independent, so you won't be missing out on anything. So come and join us at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning for the Vedanta class. Immediately after is Satsanga at 11 o'clock. Question and answer. Come and join us. We'll conclude with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avame Kavingavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shrinvan Uttavasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.